Good evening to you all. David Jonas, school board candidate. I'm pretty new at this, and I'm learning all the time. I learned at the last board meeting that it was a physics lesson that you can't give a 6-minute comment in 3 minutes. So I'm not gonna try that again. The other thing I learned, and this is not going to strike you as especially earth-shattering, is you can't trust words that come out of the governor's mouth. I got in the bandwagon very hard for Proposition 30 because I kept seeing the figure $6 billion. It's a big number. I'm not sure how much that would trickle down to the district, but it was a big, compelling number. And every press release, every stump speech, every article, $6 billion. At the same time, I would see arguments that would say, don't buy it. It's not $6 billion. It could be significantly less. It's not guaranteed to go to the schools. So I thought, let me go to the horse's mouth. I called the governor. He wouldn't take my call. But I was referred to a legislative analyst who was the guy that was one of the principal authors of the analyses of 30 and 38 that'll be provided to the voters. And he was surprisingly candid. I said, what's the deal? Is it $6 billion, or is this just Howard Jarvis hysteria that's going to be something much less than $6 billion? And he said, well, $6 billion assumes that a lot of very rosy projections come true. The money, of course, is going to come from the very wealthy, which means it's not going to come from wages. It's going to come from things like business performance, investment performance. It's highly variable. So he said $6 billion is kind of best case, and I asked him, okay, so what's the numerator of whatever money's raised? How much is going to go to the schools? He said, well, we're looking at maybe 40%. Now this is one guy, but it really caused me to reconsider 30. And I asked him, well, tell me about 38. Is 38 subject to the same constraints? And he said, well, no, the 38 money, it's not going to wash through the general fund. A much higher percentage is going to go to the schools. And also, it has the 3 benefits. It'll be a more stable and predictable revenue source because it's not being borne by the ultra wealthy. It's going to generate more revenue, and we get a higher percentage of it. So I'm not even in office yet, and I'm already flip-flopping. But I'm going to urge the board to recommend Proposition 38. I stated last meeting, and I'll say it again, that I think there's danger in advocating for 2 ballot measures. It's going to be confusing. We're competing with the Oakland Zoo tax. We're competing with the transportation tax. I think the best way to get one of them passed is to advocate for one of them. And final point, I think it's very important for the board members to get in the community and advocate for whatever is decided tonight. And even if there's not unanimity among board members, I think it's important that everybody speaks with one voice, because the main thing is we have to get one or the other of these passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address this issue? Okay, members of the board. Mrs. Runyon, please.
Well, we're kind of beating a dead horse, but I'm going to just quickly reiterate my points from last meeting. I think that supplanting money is the biggest problem. Pages 2 through 5 of 30 talk about taking money out of the general fund, sending to other government agencies, and backfilling, if they raise it, the money with this tax. Now, we can talk about whether they'll raise it, but the shift of funds has already occurred. This will legalize something that happened in the past that wasn't legal, that's being litigated. I see no help really for the schools. They're threatening a lot of cuts. There's no question about it, and they may hit us severely. But at some point, we all have to live within the budget that we have. So supplanting is the biggest problem in my mind. The second biggest problem is you stop a better fix. That when you pass something like they just did with the pension bill that doesn't address the fiscal realities, you stop the conversation. Am I happy that they passed a pension bill? I'm pretty neutral on it because I don't think that it put our public employee pensions on a sustainable path. And it's bad to make promises you're not going to keep. We deal with that a lot. And we see people coming in and making promises to us that they don't keep, and I'm not going to name any names, but it was in my mind tonight. And the last thing is a point Mr. Jonas brought up, which is the cyclical funding. That the biggest problem that we have in planning for our future is the cyclical nature of the funding that we get. And this not only does not alleviate it, it exacerbates it. The over-reliance on non-stable income streams means we're going to be dealing with this problem for the foreseeable future. If there's revenue, it's going to come in and all kinds of promises are going to be made on a revenue level that's not sustainable. What we need is a more stable funding source, and 38 provides it. You know, as a taxpayer, 38 is really annoying to me because I'm going to pay a whole lot more in taxes with 38 than with 30. But if you want to help the schools, 38's the way. And, you know, I understand and respect the people that have come up here and talked about why we should pass 30. I get your concerns, I really do. But the PTA has come out only for 30, and there's a reason for that. Sorry, you correct me. Only for 38 because they want that additional funding. And the revenue shifts with backfilling are not going to help us out of the problem that we're in now. They're a weak promise to a funding level that we aren't even getting now because the money has been shifted out of the existing year into out years. We've got to admit the reality. We've got to face the crisis, and we've got to put a sustainable stream of revenue in for support for the schools. So I'm voting yes on 38, no on 30, and no on the combined resolution.
Mr. Rogie?
Well, I like to jump on a bandwagon, but I'm not sure which bandwagon to jump on anymore. I've been back and forth on this all week. Actually, in one point, I was going to vote yes on 30. So back to the LOA I went, and I've talked to this guy's on a first-name basis with me now. I've talked to him so many times about what do some of these paragraphs mean. I thought I understood English, but evidently I don't. In 30, Kate, you're right. Once the money's in that pocket, they can't touch it. But the point is, it's got to get to that pocket. After the first year, the governor and the legislature can do what they want with that money to backfill the general fund, and then it goes out to the school. But once it's in that pocket, once it's in the educational fund, you're right, they can't touch it. But it's getting there after the second year. It is inherent on sales tax. Although sales tax doesn't have the spikiness of personal income tax, it still has some cycles to it that can come back and hurt us. And then I just realized this evening that we can't use any of that money for administrative costs. And although I haven't figured it out, it could be potentially we couldn't have any money for administrative costs. All of our money comes out of this pot. Then there would be no money dedicated to administrative costs. And then what would we do? So I'm back on not a bandwagon, but an American flyer wagon of saying no on 30. 38, I'm going to say yes to, but I still think they're both bad bills. I think anytime you put a gun to somebody's head, they're going to agree with you. If they say that there's going to be no funding for your schools after this date, and pull the trigger, then you're going to get a lot of people that are going to be out there and saying yes. And I understand that because I don't want a gun to my head, but I don't think this is a good long-range solution for us. I think if 30 doesn't pass and the trigger is pulled, and 38 doesn't pass, then we're going to see an awful lot of legislators scrambling for their jobs because that's not going to fly come January, and that's just the name of politics. So, unfortunately, or fortunately, I'm going to agree with Kate's numbering. I'm going to be voting no on 30, yes on 38, and no on the combined.
In spite of what I said last time, there is no premium for us to have a combined resolution. And in fact, upon reflection, I've noted that Robert's Rules of Order and Parliamentary Procedure almost insist that we separate these if anybody wants to. Because one of the principles of the rules is that the majority gets its way, but the minority is heard. And there's no way in this case for the minority to be heard in its precision if we even consider the both and resolution. So I would be delighted to be able to vote on each of them separately and see where the chips fall.
Mr. Martinez?
This is certainly a difficult choice to make because I feel that any funding that we can get for our education is certainly important, as everyone does. And I have to agree with Ms. White that I think it's important to be able to vote on them separately, and we'll see what the results are this evening.
Okay, so I think at this point, with the comments made, we'll drop Resolution C, because that seems to be agreeable to everyone.
We have to, is Mrs. White's motion.
You don't have to make it.
We could choose not to vote on it and table it. If you'd like to move it, we can
Well,
do that.
I can't. You made the motion to put it on there. It would be up to you.
No, it doesn't count. I mean, that was then. Nobody's going to
Okay.
move. Let's
So-
vote on the
so we
first
can
one
just-
and then vote on the second
We
one,
can
and
just
that'll make the
table it,
last one.
and it will never be voted on, which is one option if people are comfortable with that.
It's not proposed until somebody makes the motion.
Okay. I agree with that.
Okay.
I'd
Now,
be happy to move.
no, I have a few comments first.
Oh, okay.
And having thought through this for a while, and I'm of the agreement with most things that have been said. I do not, in the long run, believe that the funding of either one of these will be somehow sacrosanct for education and out of the hands of the legislature. So they will be able to manipulate the funding to their best use as long as they don't irritate all of their constituents to vote them out of office. That will be the only thing that will be an hindrance to that. But given the fact that we're facing really a very uncertain future with either one of these that comes forward, I want to have the best opportunity that at least one of them will pass. And so in that circumstance, when I do my calculations of that, the best way for that to happen is for the largest number possible to vote for or approve both resolutions. And so that's still my position, and I still encourage that point that the most likely way we actually do something that helps the schools in the immediate future is that. And I can't tell what will happen in the long-run future with either one of these, and I'm very pessimistic on that. So at this point, I'm willing to entertain a motion on A.
I'll move item A.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on A, and so all those in, are you sure? That's,
Resolution.
wait a second.
Roll call.
It is a resolution.
This is resolution in support of 30, right?
38.
38.
That's B.
I wouldn't have moved it if it were 30.
A is 007 12 13 and 38.
Oh, did they get shifted
Yes.
on today's? Okay, so I took the one from Friday. Did they get transposed since then? Okay.
You were looking at the preview, and I think when we were making
You
changes
you
on one of
switched
them,
them.
then
Oh,
it shifted.
okay. All right, so 30.
Just the order
A
shifted.
is 30.
Can I ask a question before we vote?
Mhm.
I realize
Yes.
there's some very heated opinions on this, but I'm kind of new to this, so you guys know more. But this vote tonight, when the board decides to support one or the other or neither, what actual effect will that have on the real world? Like
Nothing.
It's just like a symbolic thing, or
It's a symbolic vote.
okay.
Well, one
In
well,
other
one
words-
thing that we do, what we will
Like,
do
I'm not
though,
trying to be cynical,
No,
but
the-
I am. But.
the final vote record and the actual resolution with the vote is sent to the governor's office, and it'll be sent to Molly Munger, and it'll go on record in the similar way that Dr. Dunlop reported about what other folks, and there are some people who may be influenced by the people at the board level who understand education and local needs. So it could, but it doesn't actually have direct bearing on the vote.
But
Thank
if
you.
anyone wants to listen to the opinion of the board as a whole, they can look at this and say, oh, they decided that. It must be questionable, good, or bad, depending on their position on the board.
Are you 18?
No, not yet.
When you vote, are you going to look at how we voted?
I'm-
Okay, there's your answer. It may.
ready?
Okay, so
Question?
we have on the resolution to support Prop 38, we have a motion and a second. Would you like to do a roll call,
Certainly.
please?
Mr. Clemick,
Aye.
Mrs. Runyon,
Aye.
Mr. Rogie,
Aye.
Mrs. Martinez,
No.
Dr. Dunlop,
Aye.
Mrs. White, aye.
Okay,
Ooh, how many were that?
I'll let you mark. Okay, so now we have also on here a resolution in support of Measure 30. And so do we have a motion on Measure 30?
I would move that we adopt Resolution 008-1213 in support of Proposition 30.
Do we have a second? Okay, I will second it. Do we have a roll call vote?
Mr. Clemick,
Aye.
Mrs. Runyon,
No.
Mr. Rogie,
No.
Mrs. Martinez,
Yes.
Dr. Dunlop,
Aye.
Mrs. White, aye.
Okay, so that passes with a vote of an advisory vote and 3-2. So at this point, we've approved both of those measures.